Welcome to the Brave Podcast. I'm your host, Connie Jacob. We just finished our final third masterclass for building a culture of joy, responsibility, and connection. I was so pleased to be able to do this with my friends Bernie Godwin and Anna Hopper, all the way from Australia. We are looking to change school culture. No biggie, just changing school culture. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the principles that we shared in this final session. Now, again, we were doing this for educators, but really, these apply across the board. The problems that we get into in our human relationships, whether I'm a teacher, whether I'm a mom or a parent, whether I am a coworker, if I'm in a relationship with somebody else, as soon as they become a strategy, I lose connection with them. As soon as we lose our humanity, our human level of connecting, we are not going to get very far in our relationships. And so that's why I come on here. I come on here to be your guide in relational wellness because relational wellness doesn't just impact your relationships, it impacts your mental health. I always see if people are struggling with anxiety or depression, I ask them, how's your relationships? And oftentimes, relationships are at the core of a lot of the issues that we're feeling in our minds with our mental well being. Not just that, but our emotional well being. It comes from not just how we are thriving in our own lives individually, but we're very much a collective. Bravery rises in safe community. Belonging creates resilience. That's what I've been studying for the last 25 years. And so, having relational wellness is something that I believe is crucial to every home, to every school, to every place where we dwell together. And so, on that note, let's get into our third masterclass. So, the problem in human relationships is that we often have to come to a place where we have courageous conversations or maybe even a healthy confrontation. Sometimes there's unhealthy confrontation if we avoid this or we let things simmer. And so, I have a question for you here. When is it appropriate to actually have one of those confronting conversations, whether it's healthy or not? When is that important? The problem is that we often let it go for too long. Danny Silk, in his book Unpunishable, he talks about what he believes. And you can tell me whether you disagree with this or not, but it's this idea that when there's an unacceptable level of anxiety that's now entered into our relationship, whether teacher student, parent teacher, coworker, spouse, there's been disrespect, there's been irresponsibility. I haven't been holding my end of the rope, and now my connection is damaged. That's when it's time to have a conversation. Oftentimes, though, if we don't like confrontation, we will push these things under the rug or we'll just be upset and we won't let anybody know. And then it only festers. Now, the reason why this happens is because someone in that relationship, whether it's both parties or just one of them, they have chosen self preservation. That has been their goal. And the reason why we choose self preservation is because shame causes these disruptions or these ruptures in our relationships because maybe there's been control. Control leads to shame. I am not good enough. This person needs to fix me. Therefore, there must be something wrong with me. The fear of punishment is there. I will preserve myself when I'm afraid that there will be a punishment. Maybe you're going to make my life hard at school. Maybe that student is going to turn the class against me. That's a fear of being punished. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to preserve myself. And I'll often choose distance to do that. I will distance myself from you. If not physically, I will distance myself emotionally, relationally, mentally. I will move away from you as far as possible. If I can't do it physically, trust me, in my mind, I'm gone. And so our ability to successfully have these good, healthy confrontations is our ability to build trust. Now, the problem is that this is where we are often lacking. We lack the time to build trust, but we also often lack the structures to build trust. We aren't willing to do the harder work. We're not willing to go down the harder road. We want the quick results. We want the McDonald's drive-through results to get those students to do whatever I need them to do, or my spouse to do whatever I need them to do. And so the problem becomes that we haven't been able to commit to the long game of building trust. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's great. How do I build trust then? Well, one of the greatest ways that we can all build trust, and we can do this right now, as you're listening to this podcast or watching me on YouTube, you can manage your half of the connection in your next interaction. You can choose to differentiate your mood from somebody else's. You can allow them to feel what they need to feel and just manage your own regulation. You can not control them. You choose to control yourself. You can separate other people's decisions from yours. That's not my problem. That's theirs. I'm going to allow them to work through that. I'm managing my end of the connection. And how we manage our end of the connection is what we're going to cover in this episode. So I can't wait to dive in a little bit deeper. Our ability to resolve conflict really comes down to this idea that this is a partnership. This isn't me against you. We are in this together. I have my end of the rope. You have your end of the rope. And so, how are we going to partner together? This isn't just on you, and this isn't just on me. We get to the place where we can say, I am not afraid of your mess. But to be honest and brave with myself, when I see that, I like that. If I saw that on Instagram, I would like it. Living it out, though, however, I'm actually quite afraid of someone else's mess, especially if I'm responsible for them because their mess reflects back on me as a mom, as an educator. When I'm responsible for someone else's mess then freaks me out. And I'm just being honest. This is something that I've had to really work through in my own personal life. It's been hard for me to let go of, oh, that's your mess. That's not mine. And when I separate it, I'm not afraid of your mess anymore. But when I feel like I am responsible for your mess and it's just on me, well, now I'm very afraid of your mess. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to control you. But I want to get to the place where I'm not here to control you. I'm here to empower you. And that's what we're going to give you today. That's what I'm going to give you today is an empowerment model to be able to have conversations with anybody for both parties to leave feeling empowered. I'm not here to shame you. I remember my oldest son when he was 8 years old. One time he turned to me after I had said something and he said, Mom, stop shaming me. My intention was not to shame, but if I could reflect on the way that I was speaking to him in those days, it was very shame related because shame always exists when we use fear, control, and punishment as a way to relate to another human being. Think about it for a minute. Why was Brene Brown's study on shame so popular? Because you had a bunch of Gen Xers like me who were raised by shame. I'm not talking about our parents. I'm talking about the vibe of shame. It was everywhere. And so this is why someone like Brene Brown studying shame and bringing it to the light, we realize how much our culture is saturated with it. Well, what are we there to do? Well, I'm here to help you. That's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to control you. I'm not afraid of your mess. I'm not here to shame you. I am here to help you. Anyone who comes alongside another human being with this instead of the latter will have a powerful conversation, will have effective conversations, and even have effective confrontations. The question we have to ask ourselves is whose problem is this? What I notice in myself and in educators and anyone out there trying to make a difference and is responsible for more than just themselves is we often will burn out because we're solving everybody else's problem. We haven't defined whose problem is this. Are you working on your problem or are you working on that student's problem? Are you working on your problem or are you too busy working on your partner's problem? This is why we burn out. We burn out because we're carrying not only our own problems, but everybody else's. I need to work on my problem, which means that when I'm in an interaction, I need to decide what part of this is my problem and what part of it isn't. Because if we can get to this place where I will not work harder on your problem than you're willing to work on it, now we're going to get somewhere. The problem is that oftentimes we are working harder on others and then they don't even notice or it goes unappreciated. And now not only are we burned out, but we are bitter at the same time. And this creates more of that cycle of irresponsibility that we talked about on the episode a couple of weeks ago, where there's a bad guy, a victim, and a rescuer. I'm just wondering if you've ever heard these statements from a student or from your spouse, from your child. Stop judging me. You always take their side. You don't control me. You can't make me. What's happened when you hear statements like these? You have become the bad guy in that person's story, and you are now the victim. There has to be a better way than going through that cycle of irresponsibility where now I'm the bad guy to them, but I'm a victim to me. But now I'm going to try to rescue, or else somebody else is going to come and try to rescue. And we keep going around and around. Nobody is taking responsibility for anything. There has to be a better way. Well, there is. And that's what I want to share with you right now. This is called the empowerment model. Now, the empowerment model was created by Danny Silk, who is a social worker out of California. And I feel like this particular model, this is a conversation model that you can use to solve problems with anybody. You can solve problems with students. You can solve problems with that teacher or the parent. You can solve problems with coworkers or your spouse. Step one is using empathy. Now, empathy is the only way for us to get out of our limbic system, that reactive part of our brain, and back to our prefrontal cortex, where we are reasonable, where we can problem solve, where we can be collaborative. The problem is that we often are accusatory, we're in self-preservation mode, we're in reactive mode, we want to put the blame on somebody else, we want to put responsibility on someone else, and we've got walls up when we come to these conversations. What empathy does is it takes those walls down and allows us to all feel seen. So, empathy could sound like after someone has shared with you their side of the story, well, that sounds hard. Just that statement right there. Or if you're the type of person that doesn't do empathy, because empathy is hard, empathy is, of course, a learned behavior, but it's a part of you because you're human. And to be human means that you have an empathetic side. Maybe it's just been shut down for some time, but empathy isn't exactly our go to. So if you ever are in that place, you could ask a question such as, oh no, what happened? That there alone is empathy because now you're allowing them to really share from their side. When somebody feels seen and heard and they feel like you're seeking to understand them, it opens up their heart to have that conversation. Now, from there, we want to move into an empowerment. We want to define what the problem is. What's the problem? And what are you going to do about it? Now, that's a powerful question because now it becomes about that student coming up with the solution. But oftentimes, at least me as a mom, especially, I'm ready to solve my kids' problems. It's like, don't worry, I know what the problem is and I know what the solution is. I'm just going to save us all a ton of time. The problem is that we're robbing people, we're robbing our kids, we're robbing those students when we just move so quickly into what we know we could fix in a second. We need to collectively define what the problem is and ask them, what are you going to do about it? The next step is, what have you already tried? We need to explore. We need to explore the brilliance of these students. Oftentimes we might be surprised at how they have attempted certain things. Remember, the word discipline means to teach. So let's say a student came to you and they're in trouble. What have you already tried? We've practiced empathy. We've discovered what the problem is. What have you already tried? Maybe they've already tried to solve their problem. This is good for us to know. Or maybe they have some great ideas. Or we might just discover that they haven't tried anything. Now, I love the empowerment model for all relationships, and where I feel particularly passionate is in the area of parent teacher interviews. This question right here, these three first steps right here, could be an incredible way to open up a collaboration, that partnership, building trust between a parent and a teacher. I can't say I've ever had a teacher ask me, "What have you already tried?" As a mom with boys who have had numerous different challenges in their life, we have tried endless strategies. And had any educator ask me this question, we could have gotten very quickly further ahead. And if I can just be humble as well and realize I didn't ask this question of them very often either. What have you been trying? This is a powerful question that allows us to see what is already being done. Now, sometimes students or people might say, "Well, I haven't tried anything," because they might not see this as their problem. This is where we need to start. Until someone sees their whatever's going on around them as their problem, we need to stop and wait until they see it as their problem. If they don't see it, then we are going to be the ones that they are going to want to take on that responsibility. But what we want to do is we want to give them back their responsibility. So at this point right here, now we can ask the question, we can educate. I have some ideas. Would you like to hear them? I think asking permission is a beautiful thing to open up the mind and the heart of anybody else. Not everybody wants to hear my advice. I've got great things, I've got some ideas, but if they don't want to hear it, then we need to honor that. And so sometimes I've asked my boys, "Hey, I have an idea. Do you want to hear it?" No. Okay. And it's so hard to not share because, like I said, you've probably got some brilliant things, but we have to honor if people want to hear it or not. And then this idea of expectation. Who will be helping you through this? So at this point, we've established, I can see how you feel about that. We've defined what the problem is. What are they going to do about it? What's already been tried? Would you like to hear some ideas? Who is going to help you? And when will how will we both know that this has been resolved? A lot of times we don't have conversations with this kind of clarity and it creates such blurred lines. And so we need to clarify who is going to be doing this with you or with me? Who is a part of this? And this also shares that you don't have to do this alone. And when will we both know that this is resolved? That's a very important question. And then something that many of us need today, but don't often receive, if we're honest, is this idea of encouragement. Leaving with encouragement. What do you need? I'm cheering you on. I love the empowerment model because it gives us a framework for conversations that could be hard. It allows us to identify who is responsible for what, and it moves us forward instead of around in circles. Now, one of the things that we did in this last masterclass is we gave away some one-liners that are going to save your sanity. These one-liners have saved my life. I can't say I'm great at them all the time. And so I have found myself with students and with kids, my own kids, giving Emmy-worthy lectures when I've just had it up to here and I've talked on and on for 10, 15, 20 minutes and I've poured out my heart and soul and I finally at the end look at them with these passionate eyes like you must get it now, and they look at me like, "Oh, did you say something?" I've even had similar experiences with my husband. And oftentimes the truth is that we say so much that nobody hears anything. Now, these one-liners, not only do they allow you to say a lot in one short statement, it allows you to keep you're cool. It allows you to stay regulated rather than getting into arguments, getting into loops, feedback loops with grade eights that maybe are just going to keep you in that loop until somebody goes gray, and it's not going to be them. And so here's some one liners right here. Just saying, I know, probably so. That could be. I don't know. Nice try. And so, for example, in my home, here's how this could look. Mom, you're so unfair. I know. That's it. Yeah. That shuts that down right there. And I mean, if they carried on, it's like, well, when are you ever going to let us have our computers back? Are you never going to let us have our computers back? Probably so. What? Never, ever going to have our computers back? Eh, that could be. Well, when? When are we going to get our computers back? I don't know. Well, can we have our computers back like in 30 minutes? Nice try. What's nice about this is that I'm absolutely refusing to get into an argument. I'm just giving these one-liners. Now, some other one-liners that are really helpful are things like, no problem. I remember when my boys were younger and they didn't want to do their homework, I'd say, no problem. What do you mean, no problem, Mom? Yeah, no problem for me. I've passed grade 12. That identified right there whose problem this really was. It was not my problem. Now, can I just be honest? Just pause for a second. This was extremely hard because, again, when I'm responsible for someone, I'm afraid of this mess. I'm afraid of the homework not getting done. But if I could separate myself and allow my boys to see, actually, this is on you, then all of a sudden they become the ones that need to pick up the responsibility rather than me using bribery, threats, all kinds of tactics just to get them to do what really they need to intrinsically be motivated to do. Another one is you decide or I'll decide. What's great about this is it gives them a choice, and oppositional kids or anyone who is oppositional in their thinking, they need to know that we're not trying to control them. Also, yes, you can. There's this powerful word, yes. Yes, you can do that as soon as you fill in the blank. One of my favorite questions to ask teenagers is, how's that going to work out for you? When I want to jump in and I want to give my incredible solutions or some wisdom that might help them see things a little differently, this is a powerful question that creates critical thinkers rather than somebody who just doesn't have to take responsibility for anything in their life. How's that going to work out for you? And this last one right here that says, oh no, your kid says, oh, mom, I have a project tomorrow and it requires these 20 craft supplies and it's 9 o'clock at night. My answer, oh no. Well, what are we going to do about it? Oh no, is my way of saying, oh, again, no problem for me. That's a problem for you. And I can walk them through that empowerment model. That is rough, buddy. And we walk through the empowerment model. What are they going to do to fix their problem? But what do most moms do, or what do most teachers do, or people do? Well, we're like, oh, great. Well, now we have 1 minute to get to Dollarama, and we're all stressed now, but really we wouldn't be stressed if we remembered whose problem this really is. What I have noticed about kids who are struggling with depression, anxiety, is we think, let's take responsibility off them. They can't handle it. It's a very interesting dance. Yes, that is probably true, that we do need to watch what we're putting on. Gradual exposure is a great way to deal with anyone who's struggling with anxiety. We don't push them off the off the diving board. We let them go up the stairs and then back down. Then we let them walk a few steps and then come off again. Gradual exposure. So it's not us asking students or others to take responsibility for their life, especially if they're struggling with their anxiety or their depression or their or anything going on in their life. We're not talking about being insensitive, but when we rob people, whether that be students or anyone, from taking responsibility over their life, we are removing purpose. As humans, we were meant to have purpose. And purpose comes from taking responsibility, being motivated to do the things that I know I'm responsible for. But the problem is, we live in a culture where it's all about, no, 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 that's not my responsibility, that's theirs. And so, in this idea of the empowerment model, it's allowing us to define who is responsible, whose problem is this. And I promise you, if you can define that for yourself, and if others are defining it for themselves, well, all of a sudden you have an incredible solution. Now you are building a culture of responsibility that turns into a place of joy where connection is possible. There's always disconnection where there's irresponsibility. There's no joy in places like that. And so let's create the opposite. It takes a lot more bravery to not only identify what is my part in the problem, but to have conversations where we can clearly define what that is. And so I want to encourage you to keep being brave.
All the rebels in the world, stand up. If you're a rebel on the grind, you don't care with their mind, hands up. They can't stop us or hold us back. We that new revolution, I told them that. If you're with it, we ignite the pack. All the rebels in the world, stand up.